The growing wave of insecurity in Nigeria's southeast geopolitical zone continues to heighten at an alarming rate, with blood-chilling incidents of daylight killings despite a lull in recent times. Now, the attack on the convoy of the senator representing Anambra South Senatorial District, Ifeanyi Uba, on Sunday is one of many incidents which shows the drastic actions that need to be taken by the nation's security forces to curb such killings. The total number of casualties remain unaccounted for, but eyewitnesses say at least 5 persons, including 2 policemen and 3 civilians, were found dead, with 2 policemen injured. Despite available intelligence of their camps and the communities that the militants have taken over and occupied, which are also their operational bases, not much is being done to fully mobilize security operatives to tackle the menace of several militants camping around different states, though there have been a few successes recorded in dealing with separatist agitators. Now, cities such as Onitsha, Aba and Nnewi have emerged as manufacturing and commercial hubs over the years, with export links to other Central and West African countries. But experts say this level of conflict is capable of destabilizing the economy in the southeast geopolitical zone and driving away investors if not much is done by both the federal and state governments. The southeast governors helpless in the face of rising security threats from unknown gunmen and some accused members of IPOB. How can the federal government, which has powers over the deployment of security forces, strengthen the armed forces deployment within the geopolitical zone? We'll have a panel of security experts and a socio-cultural leader to help us understand the issues and, of course, proffer solutions. I'm Somna Sambu, and this is the Arise interview. Welcome to the program. Now, Nigerians across the globe have continued to condemn the recent attack on Senator Ifeanyi Uba, which left some policemen and civilians dead in his convoy, as the state government is promising that the perpetrators of the heinous crime will not go unpunished. Arise correspondent Amaka Ude-Walker tells us more.
Anambra State and the southeastern part of Nigeria have in recent weeks seen a spike in attacks by unknown gunmen. Less than 2 months ago, Okechukwu Okoye, a state lawmaker representing Agwata 2 constituency in the Anambra State House of Assembly, was kidnapped and later killed, with his head hung on a spike. On Sunday, September 11th, daredevil gunmen attacked the convoy of Ifeanyi Uba, a senator representing Anambra South Senatorial District. The attack is believed to have occurred at about 6 p.m. local time at Nkwo Junction in Ugwukwu in Njikoka local government area of Anambra State. Although he escaped unharmed because of his armored vehicle, some of his aides and police orderlies were not as lucky. According to eyewitnesses, the convoy was ambushed by heavily armed men who opened fire from all directions. The police public relations officer in Anambra State, Tochukwu Ikenga, says the commissioner of police had earlier led operatives to the scene and will remain on ground while making frantic efforts to identify the culprits and get to the root of the killings. While condemning the attack and killings, Anambra State Governor Charles Soludo describes the attack as a last-ditch effort by a sinking boat, which he says will not deter him from winning the battle against criminal elements in the state. And although the exact number of casualties in the attack remain unknown, the bodies of at least 5 people, including some policemen, have been recovered. The Nigerian government has repeatedly blamed the outlawed indigenous people of Biafra through the Eastern Security Network for attacks in the southeast, but the group has denied any involvement in the killings. President Buhari, who is visiting neighboring Imo State on Tuesday, had last month given an order to security chiefs to wipe out insecurity in all parts of the country. Amaka Ude-Walker, Arise News.
Well, to take a holistic look at the security situation in the Southeast geopolitical zone, I have with me in the studio the President General of the Eastern Union Congress, Ezeugwa. Also in the studio is Dr. Kabir Adamu, who is an enterprise security risk management and intelligence specialist. He's also the managing director of Beacon Consulting Limited. And joining us from our offsite studio is Patrick Agbambu, who is a security expert and public safety advocate. He's the executive officer of Security Watch Africa. Thank you, gentlemen, and welcome to the program. Now, let's start with you, Ezeugwa. You've seen President Buhari visiting, but in a very, very difficult situation. We've seen the streets in the southeast, specifically in Imo State, for example, being empty. And of course, the southeast generally, because of the trial of Nnamdi Kanu, which resumed today. Of course, we've heard the latest from the courts now that that case has been adjourned. But this has to stop at some point in time. At what point in time is the Southeast going to stop the issue of sit at home? And then isn't it looking like a face-off against Abuja when the president of the country is visiting, and instead of people lining up joyously on the streets, we're seeing empty streets instead?
Thank you so much, Sambo. We look at what is going on in the Southeast. Well, it's youth agitation. Agitation has been long. It didn't just start today. It's been there before. Even during the time of Obasanjo administration, it was there. Then it was during the Wazirika and their groups. The Masop people are there. So it's not that because Buhari is coming to Southeast or rather hatred, we don't have hatred about him. But when you look at the whole thing, look at it as from the point of leadership failure, from the states to the national level, where some people who ought to do certain things fail to do that. And when you create a vacuum, the youth will exploit it. And that's exactly what we are seeing playing out. So, but if we decide to manage it without approaching it with all kinds of brutal force, I think it will die down. I could remember during the 2021 governorship election in Anambra State, Professor Saludo. It was at that spike. But what happens those days is that the elders in the southeast, especially in Anambra State, led by Dr. Chukwemeka Zife, they brainstorm everybody, all the stakeholders, both the politicians themselves, the political elites themselves, the religious leaders, the traditional leaders, the PGs of the different communities. We are involved. We have a very serious brainstorming, and we begin to talk to youths. At the end of the day, you can see that the whole thing died down. Just of recent, because of election is approaching again, politicians are somewhere doing something, trying to get some people out of their distance, But this particular one, this Dr. Ifeanyi Uba appeared to have a signature of assassination attempt, because if you look at where he took off from Newi on his way, it's like the people ambush him at that particular junction. And there must be an insider operation, connivance, that give them the informations when he's approaching and when to start the actions. And if you look at it, try to analyze it properly, you discover that this is an attempt, it's an assassination attempt. I don't want to delve so much because the investigation is still going on that.
Ongoing at the moment.
Yes.
All right, we'll bring you in right away, Dr. Kabir Adamu, and of course we're going to be getting updates from our correspondent, but I want to ask you this. Why has it been difficult for the security forces to contain this sort of killings? I mean, we are hearing Ezeugwa saying that this has some trappings of assassination, but if we're having assassins on the streets by broad daylight like that, isn't it looking like it also has some trappings of what used to happen when we have allegations of some unknown gunmen coming to kill? I mean, is this a different dimension altogether?
And thank you. First of all, we are in a pre-election year. I think it's very important to emphasize that point in analyzing the context of the attack. Second point is I work with data. As you mentioned, I run a security consulting firm, and we do produce reports, monthly reports. We've seen remarkable progress in Anambra State specifically. Imo, and to an extent Abia, have some work to be done. And Enugu too, we've seen instances of politically motivated attacks in Enugu. But to a larger extent, Anambra, the incidents have reduced tremendously. So this, brazen attack on a serving senator who had 7 security personnel deployed with him, who was in an armored vehicle, was quite shocking, actually. Now, a couple of things have come out clearly. Number one is the gap between the residents, the citizens, and the government. You cannot run an intelligence-led security operation, which is what I think the federal government is running, when there is a huge gap. And that gap is hinged on trust. The trust deficit that exists in the Southeast, I think, is bigger than in any other region in the government. And that's not any fault of the current administration. It's something, unfortunately, that I think has happened and has existed immediately after the Civil War, but unfortunately has been expanded under the current administration. And that is number one. Number two is the manner with which the security, especially the federal security arrangement, it has created gaps that have been exploited by these non-state actors. Now, wherever, I don't want to delve into who the non-state actor is. There are so many of them. It could be the ones that we all think it, or it could be others. The gaps are being exploited by them. Number three is the repository of equipment that these security departments possess. If we look at the context of the Southeast, in terms of land mass, the Southeast...
Come back to you, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, when we get the views of Patrick Agbambu. Patrick Agbambu, this is a new dimension. If, like Dr. Kabiru Adamu pointed earlier, we're beginning to have issues of violence and then maybe assassination plots close to the election. Is there any cause for worry, especially among politicians that will be junketing from one state to the other to make their presidential bids known to Nigerians, especially those in the Southeast? All right. Well, we seem to be having some audio issues there. Well, we'll come back to you, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Just tell us about what you were saying earlier on these issues of, violence that may likely occur as we head to the political campaign season. Is there any cause for politicians to be afraid? I mean, if we could see this brazen attempt at a serving senator, I mean, isn't this enough to make some people want to have a rethink whether they should go to certain parts of the country to campaign?
Definitely. My expertise is in risk management, and one of the things that it's very clear is that exposure to risk associated with political activities increases as the time to the elections gets nearer. Once the campaign season commences, which would be, I think, in about 2 weeks' time, then the exposure to that kind of risks would be higher for politicians and then for persons associated with politicians. As an example, if you have a symbol of an opposition party and then you encounter a political convoy of another party, the likelihood of you being targeted, it's extremely high. So what more if it's a politician, for instance, who is a flag bearer of an opposition party? Now, the chances are extremely high. Now, what worries us from a specialist point of view is the involvement of non-state actors that have become providers of layers of security during political events. And I think that's something we need to discuss as a country. I'm hoping INEC is listening to this. The Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security would need to take this particular issue into consideration. We've come to a period in Nigeria where at the subnational level, there are existing creations that have backing of some state governors. Now, beyond that, communities also have those arrangements. Some individuals also have those arrangements. So it is, I think, a proven fact that there is a risk associated with political activities and it could target politicians. Now, the point I was trying to make earlier on is the special circumstances in the Southeast that would have made it a little bit easier to police. But unfortunately, as a country, we're missing out on those points. Landmass. In terms of landmass, the Southeast has the smallest. And if you look at the number of states in the country, the Southeast has the least. Number two, the existence of forested or what we call ungoverned spaces the Southeast has the least when you compare to other parts of the sub-regions in the country. So all of this would have made it a little bit easier to police the Southeast. But because of that first point I made, which is the gap, the trust deficit between the people and the government, both at the state level and at the federal level, policing the Southeast has become extremely difficult. Now, one thing that I think Professor Soludo has done that we've commended is his ability to, in an attempt to breach that trust deficit. He has created levels of engagement between the state government and several persons, and that has succeeded to a large extent in reducing the type of security incidents that we recorded in Anambra before he became governor. So perhaps as we continue this conversation, we would look at ways to bridge that trust gap and allow policing to be more effective in the region.
All right, very interesting points there, Dr. Kabir Adamu, but I'll ask that we just all hold on now and go for a short break, and when we come back, the conversation continues on tackling insecurity in the southeastern part of Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the conversations. I'm Somna Sambo, and I still have with me in the studio the President General of the Eastern Union Congress, Ezeugwa, who is also being joined by Dr. Kabir Adamu, an enterprise security risk management and intelligence specialist, and he's also the managing director of Beacon Consulting Limited. And from our offsite studio, we have Patrick Agbambu, a security expert and public safety advocate. He's also the executive officer of Security Watch Africa. Now, Patrick, let's bring you in. I was asking if indeed it's not yet time for politicians to start thinking about their security when it comes to the election campaigns beginning from September 28th. I mean, as a security expert, what will you be telling someone who comes to you for an advisory on campaigning in areas where they have opposition, especially in the Southeast?
Yes, thank you very much. I think generally everybody should develop security consciousness and become more security aware of their environment and where they are going to. But seriously speaking, and direct to your question, I think yes, because we have had histories where there are a lot of threats, insecurity heightened up during election period, electioneering campaigns, and the election itself proper, and even post-elections, we have experienced violence. I would advise such a person to become very, very cautious of where he or she is going and conduct what we call intelligence gathering on the route, live assessment of where he's going to. But I want to digress a bit with the incident of the senator. It's sad what happened, but I don't think we can conclude yet that it's a politically motivated or assassination attempt yet, because we have seen such happen in similar form in many times than this. We have seen situations where you have these people located or position themselves at areas that is accessible, and knowing that it's a Sunday, many prominent people, they may not even be aware of who is in that vehicle. They want to make statements. We have seen them. I was in Anambra when the convoy of the Commissioner of Police was attacked at a place similar to this by the market. We also remember that the late Professor Chike Akunyili was also attacked in similar form. We will need to allow those investigating to widen the scope of the investigation to be able to find out what really could have happened in that situation. But be that as it may, and as I said earlier, security, those politically exposed persons must make extra effort to ensure that they protect themselves more than this. Get closer. My colleague there have said that the truth is that there's been some mistrust between the people and the government, and so that has heightened the situation. It has also made it difficult to get credible and tangible intelligence for both the government and individuals. Yes, people must develop security consciousness.
Also, how could our policemen just be easily gunned down like that? I know you have worked with the police, for a very long period of time. I mean, a lot of people are beginning to ask questions. How could, all the policemen in the convoy just be killed like that without any form of these security forces getting back at those who perpetrated the act? Is there a serious need for audit of how our police operations or operatives actually work when they're outside? Could it have been that they got carried away and they couldn't, reply fire back? And then, how many people can afford bulletproof vehicles? I mean, from what we have seen, if not for the fact that the senator was in a bulletproof vehicle, it could have been worse than what we're talking about at the moment. In all of this, what sort of training more do you think that our security forces need when they are on VIP protection exercise?
Yeah, yes, you just raised a very pertinent question and an issue that has to be looked into. The alertness of those on escort assignments and personal protection assignments must be at alert at all time. But an audit of that convoy shows that they were close to about 8 or more police men on that because both the front vehicle, which is actually the pilot vehicle, and the escort vehicle at the back of the principal's vehicle were attacked simultaneously. That must have been a surprise attack. But we have a record to also show that 2 of them, 2 died from the police angle, and the other people were able, in the local statement security, to maneuver their way, and who know, they may have also have returned fire. But as usual, those who perpetrated the act may have moved either any of their colleague that was injured or was actually killed in that incident. We didn't get so we've not gotten the full story yet of what happened in that incident. It will have been more if the security personnel were really not at alert, because we know that the convoy comes with about 8 minus the drivers of the 2 vehicles and all that. So, but seriously speaking, those who are on this such assignments must be at alert at all time. We have seen many of them busy, gisting, answering calls, or eating while they're on escort duties, and that is very, very wrong. It's not encouraged.
Okay, I will just ask you to hold on there while I bring Ezeugwa back to the conversation. Let's talk about this insecurity that's going on within the Southeast. What are elders, Igbo elders doing? You are one of the president of the association. What are you doing about this? Are you concerned that this may actually not allow the electorate to get to hear the message that political actors are bringing in terms of marketing their manifesto? Because if this sort of violence goes on like this, some politicians may be afraid to come and market their manifesto in the Southeast. What are groups like yours doing to ensure that at least these issues of insecurity and other forms of violence are pushed back?
Thank you so much. Like I said before, last year during the Anambra gubernatorial elections, the tension was so much that there is doubt whether that election is going to be or not. At the point, people were even scared to come out, talk less of. But it took some elders of Anambra State, led by Dr. Chukwuemeka Ezeugwa, to convene a kind of summit of all the stakeholders, which includes the traditional rulers, the religious leaders, the PGs of communities, in the town union, of all people, including all the politicians were involved. At the end of the day, they took a decision what to do, and we worked so hard to make sure that the tension get down, creating a good environment for election to happen. And the election came, and nothing happens throughout the election.
Yeah, but there was voter apathy. If you look at the outcome of that election, the results, the population was just like about 20% of the entire electorate voting for the governor of the state. What happened to the 80%? Isn't this going to be the same scenario in the 2023 elections, which may deprive people in the Southeast the opportunity of, casting their votes?
Your doubt or whatever is not different from mine, because there's a high-level conspiracy now from other political parties to make sure that the Southeast is tensed up again. Well, we are aware of that.
I don't know if you have evidence. I mean, it's good for you to tell us. If you say it's a
we are aware
conspiracy
of
by
that,
other political
and we are
parties,
working so hard to make sure that it didn't happen again.
have you reported to the authorities?
Yes, of course. We communicate. So we are working hard to make sure that this one that happens, like I said, this particular one just seems to be signatures of assassination attempt. But quite all right, issues of hoodlums, bandit, unknown government has drastically reduced. Governor of Anambra State is doing wonderfully well in Anambra State. I was able to take it frontal in all nooks and crannies of Anambra State, and able to make a very serious progress towards that. And I believe that other states, Ebonyi, Enugu, it doesn't have something like that again. Like before, where every blessed day you must see somebody either gone down or whatever. So, but you look at it, and I can, conclude that such things doesn't happen again. This one must be, like I said, but we keep quiet until the investigation is over.
Okay.
But I believe that I can assure you, before the election proper, and Southeast must be peaceful. And okay. I can assure you that.
So, Dr. Kabir Adamu, he has raised a very critical point here. The allegations that we may start hearing from September 28th, when the political campaign season begins. I mean, you hear some political parties saying, okay, for example, in this instance, maybe because of the YPP senator that's involved in this, the YPP may issue a statement saying that they've been prevented from holding campaigns in a particular area because of this threat to their candidate and all of that. What do we do to avert this sort of conversation when it comes and you start hearing political parties accusing each other of not allowing certain candidates to campaign in certain areas? And then secondly, what do the governors of the Southeast need to do in this instance to engender more security? He mentioned the issue of Anambra, how the governor has been going from local government to local government, working with traditional rulers to ensure that there is peace.
Thank you. The Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security has a lot of work cut out for it. The peculiarities of each of the regions will have to be taken into consideration in understanding the risks that may arise before, during, and post the election. Now, specific to the Southeast, one risk that we already know is this huge distrust that we've talked about, and the gaps that have been created as a result of this huge distrust. Now, when you have the situation that we have in the country, where security still remains within the exclusive list, that is a lacuna within our constitution, and we must admit that in itself, it's a risk that has to be managed. How do we manage that? Enhancing the coordination between the federal and state government. The fact that the residents see the federal government as perhaps a perpetrator of some of that threat will have to be managed. And the best way to manage that is to involve state-level security arrangements, especially towards the provision of intelligence.
Yeah, are you talking about state arrangements like Ebubeagu that they have in the Southeast, which hasn't been so strong like that of Amotekun in the Southwest? And then, of course, we've heard that even some northern states are beginning to work on forming similar security, systems.
It's the point I was making earlier on. Because of what I do, I know there is no state in this country that does not have a state-level security arrangement. And we are yet to, as a country, discuss that point vis-a-vis the election. Currently, the Inspector General of Police and the Office of the National Security Advisor chair the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security. But we are silent about the involvement of this state-level security arrangement. If you look at the Electoral Act and what it allows security agencies to do during elections, we've not in any way mentioned the existence of this state-level security arrangement. That's from a constitutional point of view. From an operational point of view, they are involved. A governor, for instance, in Imo State, who wants to go out for a particular electoral activity, he's not going to
deny that of the existence of Ebubuagui in that state. He's going to involve them to a certain extent in the provision of security. Now, what happens, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, if that same governor or someone within his team decides to use that state-level arrangement against an opposition party. So that brings me to the point. We need to discuss this, recognize the risk, and also accept the fact that the possibility of the weaponization of security during the electoral, the political season is something that we need to understand and manage. What we've been discussing so far, portrays that possibility. And the best way to manage it is to strengthen coordination between the federal and state government.
Yeah, of course, should politicians be investing in buying armored cars? I mean, like we've seen the senator surviving this attack because he was in an armored vehicle.
From a demand point of view, and I'm sure my colleague in this co-discussant in Lagos will collaborate this. This is the season
He's actually
where
in Abuja here.
Okay, this is the season where when you're selling security equipment, especially when for protective security purposes, you will make a lot of money. There are so many of them. I don't want to mention them on air, but politicians, demand for them and they use them in their protection. But it's never enough, for the simple reason, in Hausa we have this saying that he who wants what you have has an advantage. Because he's actually waiting for you. You are out there, you are campaigning, but he's patient, waiting for you. So we need to go after the enemy. Anything short of going after the enemy, the adversary, because again, enemy is a very loose word. So maybe let me use the word adversary. We need to go after the adversary. Delineating that adversary, understanding that the adversary exists, is the best way to go. And that is where that trust deficit that I mentioned. The adversary is not a ghost. He lives together with us. We know, some of us know who the adversary is, but for certain reasons, we keep quiet about the existence of that adversary.
All right, and Patrick, we've seen some groups in the Southeast saying that there should be no elections at all. How do you think that the federal and state authorities should actually tackle this issue? Because we've seen during the continuous voters registration exercise, some of these groups, whether you call them IPOB, ESN, or non-government, I mean, going around, in fact, even killing an INEC staff that was in charge of the continuous voters registration. They say they don't want any elections in the Southeast. How do we handle this issue?
Yeah, I think it's not a security issue to handle, really, as far as I'm concerned. It's a political issue because these are the people that we must admit here, even though some of my friends, particularly in the Southeast, are not ready to discuss it and to call a spade a spade. These guys have been able to put fears, they have been able to put fears in their minds and hearts of their fellow citizens, and so they are really afraid about coming out. Like my colleague Kabir did said, the presence of the non-state actors has created a lot of fear within the system, and the people are beginning to ask, really, can the state securities be able to protect the people to be able to do it? So, and it's a very big challenge at this time. I believe that the people, the leaders like the chief himself in the studio, will be able to reach out to their people and talk to them. There's need to really get close to the people and find out what are they asking for, what are they agitating for. There have been so many reasons given. Some have said because the Republic of Biafra and some other reasons. Is it something that can be actualized in this system we have now? What are the processes? Is it through political situation? But of course, it can never be through security arrangement. You can decide to send all the whole armed forces or the whole police over there. It will never be able to resolve the issue, and that is why we need the people, the elders, we need the opinion leaders and the government to put their foot down and talk to the people that are causing the problem, to say, listen, as it is right now, we are still part and parcel of the republic called Nigeria until there is any other arrangement, which also is a political arrangement, to be able to get what we are demanding or what you are demanding for. Let us allow peace to reign, because the Southeast has now 2 days of the week is gone, and by tomorrow and Friday, nothing is economical. They are suffering, political. They are also suffering, and we can't continue this way. So, election, as we speak, coming, then people are confused. None of these political presidential aspirants or who have gone to the Southeast to try to reach out to the people because of this situation we are talking about. So
all right, I'll ask you to just hold on there. Yeah, I'll just ask you to hold on there while we try to round off this conversation and bring Ezeugwa back to this conversation. When you see some groups in the Southeast saying that elections must not hold or Nnamdi Kanu must be freed, for example, the separatist leader is still undergoing a judicial procedure and he can't just be freed like that except if there's a political solution. Like Patrick has said earlier, what do you do as elders in this instance? Isn't it going to affect the turnout during the election? And should there be more conversation on how to free this gentleman politically out of it? Or what else can you do, since President Buhari in this instance has told the Southeast elders that the judicial process must not be tampered with? It should be allowed to continue. What do we do within this kind of very tough situation?
Thank you. Let me, first of all, make it very clear and known to you that please count IPOB out of this. IPOB is not involved on this process now. If you watch Kasiama in Bats, all the activities of IPOB has come down. There are no longer problems there. It's like he mentioned, Dr. Adamu mentioned, third force, non-state actors have moving. In Nigeria, if you watch what happens during the primaries, desperations, politicians, so desperate to have it all. So, and it happens not only now in the Southeast, it's going to happen in other parts of Nigerians. What is happening? Like I told you before, there is a grand conspiracy to stop people from the Southeast, to reduce their voting strength. And that is why they are now trying to move in again to see how they can activate the process they have.
And we what are elders like you doing about it? If there's a conspiracy and you have facts, what are you doing with the government and security forces?
And that is why we are fighting seriously to make sure that they will not succeed. Nobody will ever try that nonsense again. Nigeria belongs to all of us. We are part of Nigerians. And as such, nobody will arrogate to himself the part or the right or control to the rest of others. So I believe that this conspiracy, we have once discovered that, and we are working to make sure that it didn't happen. Because their process, their aims and objectives is to reduce the voting strength of people from the Southeast. Now we have our own candidate from the Southeast. So there are every effort to make sure that they are frustrated. We are working hard to make sure that Nigerians, where we find ourselves, we didn't just come in. It's where nature locates you as an environment. You exist there. And as such, nobody will come and push you around. We are part and parcel of Nigeria. And as such, we have that right to exercise our civic right to vote and decide who becomes our leader. So now, in this, the other aspect of it is that the politicians, there is this agitation.
Very quickly, as we
agitations going on. You know the genuine agitations. And those ones are political, can be negotiated, you know, that kind of thing. But the other aspect of it, the criminal aspect of it, that when you start in a situation where you know, introduce a kind of criminal characters, kidnapping people, slaughtering people, cutting people's head, and all those stuff like that, extorting money from people for them to be released and all stuff like that. Those ones are not part of agitations. These are criminal element that must be dealt with. And this is what Soludo is doing in Anambra State.
Okay.
The leaders have to
Adamu,
stand up.
I just have to bring you in very quickly before we end this conversation. Now we are going to have a situation whereby we'll have one candidate a major candidate being from the Fulani or Hausa Fulani, as it's called politically, angle, and then we're going to have another candidate that's coming from the southwest, from the Yoruba angle, and then the third candidate that's strong coming from the Igbo or Southeast angle. Isn't this a security threat itself when you have the three biggest geopolitical zones or ethnic areas having candidates in the election? Wouldn't this lead us to some form of chaos? And what should we do in terms of the government and the people to avert any crisis that may come up as a result of this?
Thank you. Read my August report, the Beacon Consulting Nigeria Security August report. We addressed that squarely. The religious and ethnic divide in Nigeria, they are tectonic templates that Nigeria lies on. And unfortunately, with all sense of responsibility, the discourse so far has narrowed down on these two issues, the ethnic background and the religious background of people. And unfortunately, I blame the political parties for highlighting this point. That's what we tried to point in our report. I think as the campaign season is lifted, we need to go back and focus on developmental issues. How do we address the developmental issues facing Nigeria? Those issues are almost threatening our very existence. It is not religion, it is not ethnicity that is challenging our existence as a state. And I haven't said that, and in my closing remarks, I've had a lot of conspiracy theories from the chief. I think I think what we need to do, and I would urge him, he need to talk to the governors of the Southeast, invest in intelligence. It has helped the Southwest. Southwest is recording the lowest security incidents in the country, and it's because they have invested in intelligence. The Southeast needs to do that. I would tell the same thing to the northern governors. Invest in intelligence, understand who the threat elements are. If we speculate, then we're allowing the enemy to continue to procreate and affect our existence.
Okay, very interesting perspective. The major idea here, from what I can sum up from what you have said, is that we shouldn't look at anyone as a Yoruba candidate or Igbo candidate or Hausa or Fulani or Hausa Fulani candidate, as is usually said. And of course, that's a very, very strong way to end this conversation, considering the insecurity we've had in the southeast of the country. It's the thinking of everyone that those who have grievances should try to look at several political solutions or even socio-economic solutions to it, rather than just allowing insecurity to fester and disturb especially the commercial aspirations of several people in the southeast. Well, we must thank you so much, Ezeugwa, who is the President General of the Eastern Union Congress, and Dr. Kabir Adamu, who is an enterprise security, risk management and intelligence specialist, and of course the Managing Director of Beacon Consulting Limited. And from our offsite studio, we've been joined by Patrick Agbambu, a security expert and public safety advocate, who is the Executive Officer of Security Watch Africa. Well, that's how it's been for this edition of the Arise interview. Do join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Goodbye and thank you for watching. I'm Son Sambo.